Debbie Zita from Ignite Your Joy here with the amazing Tanya Lavan, who is a collaborative family lawyer working in Victoria, Australia. Tanya, welcome tonight. So happy to have you here. Let me get a bit cosy and comfortable next to you. So we've been talking the last few months around family collaborative law and what it actually is. So could you let us know what describes family collaborative law?
Sure. So family law is essentially a separation of a couple. So we're looking at asset separation and also children, spend time arrangements. What we find in terms of family law, the experience for children and also for parties is that it can be very high conflict. Sometimes it can be fueled by the process of separation and the family law, the sort of process of going through the courts, litigation, and the adversarial approach of blame on the other in terms of sort of a fear-based approach to blaming the other so that then you hope that you'll get the best outcome possible.
Right.
Collaborative law is an approach that removes all the fear from the situation or attempts to, and tries to remove at any option for litigation at all, and also have the parties come to an agreement between the two of them as to a likely outcome, or the actual outcome, without it sort of being decided by a judge, without it being litigated, without there being any threats of litigation, fear-based responses, and it's a really handheld approach to it.
Now, I've obviously been through the approach myself, which is how you and I met. When I went through my divorce, coming on to 5 years ago now, the first thing that we thought about was how do we keep our son the focus?
Yes.
And so straight away we went into looking around, what is collaborative family law? I guess one of the things that I'd love to know is, for people who don't know about it, obviously I'm assuming it's going to save you money in the long run.
Correct.
Yep.
You spend between 10% to 30% of a classic family law matter. Yeah.
Okay. Is the process shorter or longer than if you were to litigate?
Yep, it's shorter, so ordinarily 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
But that may be a little bit longer if you have one party that is sort of not ready to separate. So sometimes what we find is if there's one person that's been ready to go for a while,
right.
They leave, the other person isn't quite ready for separation, they may just need a little bit more time and hand-holding.
Okay.
So it could be a month or two longer. But if you're going down a classic family law approach, you're looking at 6 months to 2 years.
Now, the reason that you and I connected obviously initially was through, my divorce, and we came together professionally. And then we met up a few months ago and we really connected on, I guess, supporting families that were going through divorce, which is, as you and I both know from different experiences, is such an emotionally draining and exhausting process. It is a death in itself, is how I describe the end of my marriage. It's going through a grieving process. What makes you so passionate about family collaborative law?
Yep. Well, I think one thing that I mentioned to you in terms of collaborative law was that I was quite young in collaborative law when I met you, and you had probably one of a very big inspirational moment for me, which still I get a little bit teary about when I think about it. The family law process is very adversarial, and you're looking at a family and you're quite often looking at a situation where there was love before and there's also children or a child. And I think it's very important that the children and also the family unit be able to then move into the future in a positive manner, in a positive way. What I was finding is that in my attempts to help people through family law, I perhaps wasn't helping as many as I could, because we're straight away into the process of litigation, fighting. I'm defending my client. I'm saying, give me something to defend your position about this. We have to go to court. We have to spend this much money, et cetera, et cetera. And the client's sort of on a roller coaster ride that they don't know what's coming next. They're sort of having mud thrown at them at the same time. It's really emotionally and also financially taxing. And then what I would find at the end is, even with a dream client that was so child-focused, they were quite broken and their capacity for co-parenting was diminished. Collaborative law, however, is, in my view, completely different. What you do in collaborative law is you have a lawyer that will say to you, okay, look, I'm going to hold you in a space. The other person will also be held in a similar space of, look, let's be really dignified, let's be completely child-focused, and let's put the kids and the family first.
Yeah.
You're engaged with a developmental psychologist who will say to you, okay, so your child's 2, how much time do they need with mum and dad, or mum and mum, or dad and dad, grandparents, how much, if they're 4, it will be completely different. And they'll work with you to come up with a plan that the 2 of you, or 3 of you, or 4 of you will choose. That's really child focused. And you find that there are these amazing moments of generosity that come from them. And if you recall that I've mentioned it to you before, that I remember being in the room where the conversation that took place with both lawyers there and also the neutral facilitator was, look, these are my goals and these are my fears. And I recall that it was one of the 2 of you at the time said, oh look, no, you can have that. And it was something that in the traditional family law approach there is no way that would have been given to the other. And there was just the reaction from the 2 of you. There were sort of small tears. Everybody was really taken by it, but there was an energy in the room immediately of, look, generosity, kindness, and we've got this, if that makes sense. So I knew then, in that moment, that your family would be fine. And so the process then was quite easy, sort of going through, this small aspect, that small aspect, but the 2 of you were able to negotiate and communicate in a way that was really, really child focused, really focused on the other, and it's sort of a commitment that the 2 of you have made, and ongoing, from what I hear, you're still able to co-parent together.
Yeah, we have been.
Because you've learnt, it's almost as though the skills that you had could have sort of been forgotten, and there could have been a fight there, but instead it was honing the skills. Okay, now we're in a different space now. How do we work on the communication again? How do we make that better, and how do we make it really important? Well, how do we make our son the main thing?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. What can we say to people? So I know there are, when a marriage ends, there's a whole lot of different reasons why it does end. People who feel betrayed or are going through a grief process before the divorce even starts are often looking at, getting back at their partner. I mean, I'm just calling it like it is. It just is out there. It's how it goes very often.
I have it in writing from clients, and phone from clients, and conversations with clients, definitely.
Yeah. So my advice, and I say this without any judgment, because I understand that people go through some really nasty things at the end of a marriage and go through things, and there's a reason why you have decided to part ways. But my advice, and I'm going to ask you for yours too, is when you're looking at ending a marriage and you do have children, which is obviously what family collaborative law is all about.
Not just children.
But the whole family unit.
Yeah, absolutely.
My one piece of advice for families is that my son's father is always his father, and that he represents a half of him as I represent a half of him. He's his own person in his own right too, but he's half mum, he's half dad. And so whenever I would go to be frustrated at his father, and he towards me, because we had our moments as well, I would always remind myself, and he would remind me, and I would remind him too, that it's about Jonah.
Which is
and
beautiful.
So what we would do in those moments is we would stop, we would take a break, we'd have a breather, we'd have a cry, we'd call our separate families, whatever it was, and then we would come back together when we were calm. And so I'm just wondering if you're talking to people who are thinking, well, family collaborative law sounds a bit wanky or a bit weak.
Yeah, it does, and we get that a lot. Yeah.
So
we get that a lot.
what would you say to people that are in that position of feeling angry, and rightfully so?
I would say to them that you won't get what you think you are going to get out of it if you do go to an adversarial approach. So understanding that you might be very angry and also very upset. If you think that hiring the best litigator in Melbourne or in the world, going at the other side, gun for leather, will bring you some kind of satisfaction or healing, it really, really won't. I've had clients that have come to me that have been subjected to awful, awful things. People can be quite cruel. I've also had people that have come to me that have said, look, I've done the wrong thing, I had an affair, my former partner didn't deserve that, and I've got to make this right. I've also had people that have separated really, really amicably, and then things have gone quite bad because of an approach that's been taken in terms of litigation. I would say to people that healing doesn't come from the courts. The courts don't have the capacity for it. If you think about why the Family Law Act and why family courts were set up, they were set up in 1975 when you had women that were separating from fathers and husbands with no capacity to look after their children. Essentially what the courts are set up to deal with are significant issues of dispute. So we're looking at really awful family violence and abuse. The courts are there to essentially stop really terrible behaviour, and also provide an option for negotiation and an option to move matters forward. If you're looking at a court process where you're not going to get before a judge within 12 months, you're not going to get what you think you will from it. Essentially what you can do is, if you are a victim of family violence, if you're a victim of abuse, if your child is, then the courts will help you, yes.
Okay.
That's the avenue that you want to take, okay? So if you are experiencing anything like that, go to a lawyer that understands family violence. But otherwise, no, it's not necessarily the most appropriate avenue.
Okay.
I would say speak to somebody that's going to give you a complete toolkit. You're going to be looking at counselling, a developmental psychologist for your child, somebody that's able to provide you with a financial planner about what your finances can look like in the future, and really hold you and give you that assistance, because you want to be able to look back in the future and say, I was really dignified in how I conducted myself. No matter what was thrown at me, I was able to lean on my lawyer as a support person, and lean on the people that they put me into to touch with.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really proud of how I handled myself. It could have gone really, really badly, but it didn't.
Wonderful advice. Thank you so much for your time, Tanya. I've got a lot of respect and admiration for you. I look forward to more conversations, and I hope that you enjoy this short video around family collaborative law. Talk to you soon. Bye.